when we sit down with our partners, and they say it to us straight out, you know, you guys are as strong as we've got in the industry. So that makes me really proud. And I think it just comes back to treating people not as a supplier, but as a partner.
Yeah.
And nearly what we call as part of our family.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of these people have become great friends of mine and Phil. You know, they're not only strong colleagues, they've become great friends. I've been to their weddings and, you know, I've been to the christening of their kids and things like that, because that's the kind of relationship we've built with them.
In this episode of The Little Black Book, I'm joined by Peter Williams. Peter is the co-owner and CEO of Hoffman Travel. With nearly 3 decades of experience in the travel industry, Peter has overseen a period of significant growth for PHT. Now employing over 200 people in 10 branches, Hoffman Travel has been awarded the Best Travel Agent Award at the NTIA Awards on 12 separate occasions. In this episode, Peter shares his sliding door moment when, after a gap year full of travel, he abandoned a career in commercial property to become a travel agent. He discusses how the establishment of an A-grade senior leadership team helped the business remain nimble, thereby facilitating growth and surviving several crises. Peter shares how focusing on building relationships with team members and suppliers helped his business work through the COVID-19 lockdowns, and he describes how the development of a niche and clearly understanding the business' unique selling proposition helped the business differentiate itself and become a trusted brand. He also speaks about the importance of never leaving anything in the tank and giving your absolute best effort.
Welcome to The Little Black Book, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs who provide their first-hand experiences to help others learn and grow. This podcast is brought to you by Altitude Advisory. Altitude Advisory is a modern business advisory firm helping business owners build a better business for a better life.
Mate, favourite movie of all time?
Got a couple. It's always hard. It's a bit like picking your favourite child, but I'm a big fan of Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. So you put those two together, and my background in travel, and the bucket list comes up.
Okay.
Just a ripper. One of those, when you're having a bit of a tough day, it's a good one to put on. You know, you see great destinations all around the world, and you've got two fantastic actors. The other one that I loved as a kid was the Shawshank Redemption. That was just a great movie, and about resilience and a bit of stuff we're going through right now. So. Yeah, 2 great movies.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, interesting. We talk about, you know, goals and some bits and pieces through this chat, and you mentioned a bucket list. Do you have your own bucket list?
Probably not. I guess because I am in travel and I've travelled a lot. You know, I've ticked off a lot of the iconic places. I keep falling in love. We often travel with a group of family and friends, and there's about 10 of us, and we love, you know, doing villas. You know, whether it's Tuscany or, you know, recently we stayed in a nice little chateau in France or whatever. And we got together last night just at the pub, actually. We're talking about, you know, what might be our next destination once we can, you know, travel freely again. And it's a real dilemma between going back to your favourite places or trying somewhere new. So, you know, that's always the dilemma, because you fall in love with these places that you go. Yeah. And Italy and France, you know, they're always special. It's great food and wine and all the things that we like. But I think our next place is somewhere in the Basque region, which is, you know, in between France and Spain there. And, maybe around San Sebastian or something like that.
Yeah, very cool. What about a book that, as a young child or as a young adult, that had a real impact on you, and why?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. As a kid, I was an Enid Blyton fan, so I read all those books. But the one that's really had an impact on me, and I don't even know when the first time I read it, but it'd have to be 24, 25 years ago, was Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you've ever read that one. And you can read it in about an hour. It's just a ripper, and I reckon I've read it 2 or 3 times. And it's just a great one about resilience and change, you know. And in our industry, there's always change. There's always things coming up. And so sometimes I just go and grab the book again and have a quick read. And gee, it's fairly empowering, actually.
Yeah, it is. And there's probably some really good lessons in there for, you know, team members and things like that as well. Is that, well, you know, all of a sudden things tomorrow are different than what they are today, and how you adapt and...
Yeah, it's spot on. You know, adapt to change, and everyone's scared of change. And I remember when we first got our executive team together, which was probably about 15 years ago, there were 7 of us. I actually just bought them all a copy of the book and just gave it to them. And I don't think there was one of them that came back and said, geez, that wasn't an interesting read. They just loved it. So yeah, it's probably one that's had a bit of impact on me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, this is pretty topical for you being in the travel industry. Do you have a travel experience that has really had a profound impact on you, either personally or in terms of business or family or whatever it might be? Something that was really transformative for you?
Yeah, interesting one. Having, again, travelled to a lot of places and you fall in love with these places. But I guess one that really had an impact on my family, and it was, we've been lucky enough to travel a lot, and our kids love, the typical, the Disneyland experiences and all that type of thing. So they're very lucky, and we're very lucky as a family that we've been able to do that. So I was very keen to show them kind of the other side, a developing nation, maybe a third world country or whatever. And we did a trip to Vietnam and Cambodia. And part of that was visiting, Cambodia, some of the places like the orphanages and things like that, just to show the three boys. And at the time they were probably 7, 9 and 10 or whatever. They'd had a pretty good life up till then. And I just wanted to show them, what some of the kids their ages were going through and how lucky we were. And not only is Vietnam's a beautiful destination, I love the food and the culture over there, but Cambodia, just people doing it really tough. I know it had a profound effect on our whole families, and particularly our kids. And I think, when we got home, when you say eat your meat and 3 veg type thing, and they go, "Oh, I don't want to eat the veg," they looked at that and go, "Yeah, we're going to eat the veg from now on," because we know there's kids on the other side of the world starving. So, I think that's probably one that was really transformational.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of the stuff in there, about just being grateful and, gratitude and not taking things for granted.
Correct. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, that was a great experience. And then we've just had some amazing experiences elsewhere that I think the part that I love with the business is I can combine business and pleasure really easy because, travel is probably one of the number one things that I do. I just love it and have loved it from a kid and probably the reason why I'm sitting here today. And to be able to make a business out of something that you love and that's an absolute passion, and then go and regularly travel and bring that back and promote that to our clients and sell dreams. It's a pretty good gig.
Good fun, and one of the real perks of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
Cool. Now, mate, you've been with Phil and down at Phil Hoffman Travel for a fair while now, over 25 years.
Feels like 100 years, but
but you started off almost as a rookie and progressed your way through, and subsequently became CEO / general manager back in 2007.
Yeah.
Talk us through that journey, and I guess how you started off, and then how did you become a part owner and then take over as CEO, and what all that's looked like for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It was one that actually made my dear late mum cry, actually, because I'd been to uni for quite a long time, actually. I did 2 degrees, and I think mum and dad thought I was always going to stay there. The uni bar was always a favourite of mine, and I learnt to play my darts pretty well and things like that, so I wasn't keen to leave too quickly and get into the real world. But what happened is I ended up with a postgraduate degree in commercial valuation, and to this day I've still got a lot of mates in that industry. It was a great industry, but at the time, when I graduated in the early 90s, there was a real commercial bust, and it was a struggle to get a job. So I'd always wanted to travel, hadn't had too much travel experience other than locally with my folks at the time, didn't have a passport, and was really keen to kind of do that working holiday. But when I started looking into it, what I didn't want to do was go overseas, just do what most Aussies do, fly into London, work in a pub, and really not afford to be able to do too much else and just kind of get stuck in London. So I decided to effectively have that gap year. I'd looked for a job in commercial valuation, couldn't find one. So I decided, righto, so just let's get some money together for a year and then travel for a year where I don't have to work.
Yep.
And pretty well that worked to a T. At one stage I was holding down 4 jobs. So I was doing anything and everything from bar work at night time, working in a hardware store, I was collecting census data, I was doing some labouring, anything to get a few dollars together. And so then I travelled the following year for 12 months, and I travelled with a couple of mates, and we travelled via, we bought vans and travelled around in vans, and I did a few organised tours like Kentucky tours and things like that, and just had an absolute ball and fell in love with travel, and that was great. Came back to Adelaide, and things really hadn't improved too much, so I was struggling again. I got a couple of jobs here and there in real estate, but it really wasn't what I wanted to do because it was more around that commercial valuation, commercial real estate that I wanted to get into rather than residential selling and whatever. So I was never really comfortable with that. And the company I was with ended up going bust, unfortunately, and maybe fortunately for me, because it made me just rethink about what my passion was. And I worked out my passion was travel. And it was kind of a sliding doors moment. I went back, I actually booked my travel through Phil Hoffman Travel.
Yeah.
And I walked in the door and I was just taking a bottle of wine to thank my consultant at the time, Bob Thompson, who ended up being a bit of a mentor for me in the early days. Bob's a ripper guy and retired with us, some time ago. But, I wanted to go and thank him. And as I was walking through the door, Phil Hoffman, my business partner, he was walking the other way and he goes, "Gee, I know you from somewhere." I said, "Yeah, I booked this travel experience through, about 14 months ago." And he said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm just coming back to thank my consultant." He said, "Oh, great." He said, "Do you mind if I just sit down and have a chat while we, when you go and hand over your bottle of wine or whatever?" So the three of us just sat there and chatted, the consultant, Phil and me, and I reckon we chatted for an hour and a half, 2 hours about my experience. He said, "Geez, you really love this time." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Oh, funny you should say. We just basically made redundant the other day. The company's gone bust." He said, "Oh, you should be a travel agent." I went, "Oh, come on, mate. I've been to uni for 6 years. I'm not been a travel agent." And he said, "Oh, the offer's there." 4 weeks later, I thought, yeah, why not? And I know for a while there it was a bit of a step back. And I went to old Mum, I said, "Look, I want to be a travel agent." She started crying because she said, "You've been to uni all these years." And I said, "Yeah, but this is what I really want to do." And so that's where it kind of all started. And so I went back to see Phil and he made me nearly cry again because he said, "Oh, that's all great." He said, "But you've got to go off and do a 6-month course." And I went, "Mate, I've been to uni for 6 years. I don't want to go back." And he goes, "Well, I won't look at you unless you do." And I guess the rest is history. He backed me in and I got a job. And the job he gave me was some weekend work initially. And Phil wasn't open on Saturdays and Sundays. And I always thought there was a big gap there. And so we talked that through. And he said, "Look, if you want to," he said, "you can work from Saturday through, say, to Wednesday and have Thursday and Friday as your weekend." The only thing for me is I used to play a lot of sport.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a bit of a transformational moment as well because I thought, right, well, I've got to give up my cricket, which I wasn't overly happy with. So we did a bit of a deal initially where I worked Saturday mornings, had Saturday afternoon off, but it soon became so busy that I had to give the cricket away, which was fine. And, I had to get on with my career. I was, 27, 28 at the time. Then the next step, I guess, was a couple of years later, and things were going really well at Glenelg, and I was pretty okay at my craft, and Phil would recognise that. And there was an opportunity for us to expand. And I think what Phil was looking at was that potentially I was either going to go and do something on my own, or if he wanted to keep me pretty interested, then he may have to get a vehicle to make sure it worked for me as well. And so that's when he came to me. He said, "Look, would you like to open up a branch for me?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, be pretty keen to do that." And we agreed on Nord. And I think that's the first time I met you. And we opened up Nord, and it was just a great organisation. We just got some great staff together. We got great team culture. It was a real culture first thing. And it was only a couple of years later we were actually outperforming Glenelg. I think when I end up handing the baton there to my 2IC at the time, I think we had about 16 or 18 staff and we were really on fire. And the place was going really well. I needed to get back down to Glenelg for a few reasons. One was one of the great challenges, which was September 11, the collapse of Ansett all happened within a couple of days. And we basically lost, I talked about Bob Thompson, my bit of a mentor in the early days. He was the manager down there. And he rang me and he said, "Pete, I've had enough. I can't cope with all this collapse and, all the things that happened at that time." And I just said, "Bob, look, can you hang in there for a while? I just need a bit of a transition." He said, "Mate, I can give you a couple of weeks." So it was decided that I would pop back down to Glenelg and, run that store as well. So in the meantime, I guess I'd become a director at Nord pretty well from nearly day one that Phil and I went halves in that office. But for me to move down to Glenelg, which was wholly owned by Phil, it was like, well, I want to come down, I want to help out Phil, but what we've got to do is we've got to work out how this is going to work, for us as a shareholding. So what we did is we effectively merged the two companies, and over time I could work my way up to becoming an equal shareholder, which, I did a few years later. So that was kind of my transition into, I guess, owning 50% of the business and then, moving on to CEO and running the strategic direction, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's a really great story. And I think, a couple of really important messages come out of there. Just a lot of people that will be listening would have, heard of Simon Sinek and about finding your why.
And I love Simon Sinek, by the way.
Your core purpose, just a realisation, well, do you know what, I actually love travel and I want to go and be a travel agent as opposed to a commercial property valuer.
Correct.
And the other thing there, just about, the cultural environment, and I think we might talk about that a bit, having some of these challenges that the business has been through, how important that's been for the business. So now you've seen phenomenal growth happen with PHT over the last 10 or 15 years, from that initial one branch, then to you going to Norwood, and now there was 10, 12 sites or whatever it is that's around, and a huge number of staff. What's been the real key to the growth for you guys?
Yeah, look, I think people. I think first and foremost is we talk about culture. I think from day one, I always wanted to have a really great culture in our business, and so getting the right people in your business, giving them the vision, and if they've got the same vision as you, I think, the growth path is much easier. You don't get any barriers put up. And I found that in the early days that people were ready to come on the journey with me, which was awesome. You know, so if I said, look, we're going to expand, or we're going to put on some more people, or we're going to set up a new department, they were with me already. So I think surrounding yourself with people with a very similar vision to yourself is a key one. But then I guess you go back to the core principles of many other businesses when you're looking at growth, and probably the first one is market penetration. How are we going to penetrate the market? And I've got a theory that we have to be always on. So our marketing is around this kind of omni-channel. So it doesn't matter when you're contacting Phil Hoffman Travel, we're going to be there in some capacity. Now at the moment it could be via web chat, it could be via our website. Could be anything, but then it kind of points back to the one direction. We've been talking with the team a lot about just always being on, and I think that's really important. And I guess when you look at some of our competitors, and it could be the Flight Centre Group, or the it could be the mum and dad travel agency around that. They all do a good job, but for their ability to be always on is near impossible. So we saw that as a great market advantage, because we could own our direction under that, which was great. Now, this could be traditional marketing, whether it's the print, whether it's the radio, whether it's the TV, it's the digital stuff. As I said, the web chat. We now have virtual studio, where at the start of COVID, we knew people wouldn't be able to, or would not want to come into, for health concerns, come into the agency. So we set up a studio where our consultants can speak directly on camera to our clients, and people felt very comfortable with that, which was great. But a big one from day one was our event-based marketing. So what we would do is we would have consumer presentations, and again, knowing that our competitors just really didn't have the manpower to do this. We actually built seminar rooms in all of our branches where you could come along, and if you wanted to hear about the Greek islands, or you wanted to hear about European river cruise or coach touring or whatever, we had expert presenters, which could be myself, or it could be one of our managers, or we could bring in someone from our key partners, and they would tell you as it was, a day in the life of a river cruiser, for example. And there was just such an appetite from the public for that, and for us it was a win-win situation. It always led to great sales, which was terrific. The next one, I guess, was market expansion. We needed to increase our footprint in SA. If we were going to create more market share, we had to increase our footprint, as well as we were known with our Norwood and Glenelg kind of superstores. We then moved out into the region. So was someone from the Barossa Valley or Victor Harbour really going to come down and book with us? Probably not. So we set up offices there. Then we looked at other key metrics, places like Modbury, Stirling up in Adelaide Hills, down to Semaphore, where there was some growth. It was the right demographic. We looked at all those principles as well. And, before we knew it, we had 11 branches. So, we expanded as well. So product development is key for us. So we had to make sure that when the consumer came to us, not only did they get a better experience around customer service, which is absolutely critical, and we spend a huge amount of time on training and making sure that we're as good as we can be in that area. We had to provide products to them that, one, that they wanted, and two, potentially were exclusive to Phil Hoffman Travel as well. And so we went out and we created a product team, and that product team sits in our head office to this day, and they're creating just fantastic packages that you just can't go down the road and buy anymore. So again, this gave us exclusivity. So people had to come to us if they wanted that particular product, which was great.
So there's a couple of really clear, unique selling propositions there about always being on or being in those regions, but plus those exclusive products as well. Really important.
No doubt, and it's been a key to success. The other one, I think, is also making sure that your business is well diversified. And so we not only rely just on, say, the retail or the leisure market, we specialise in parts of it. So cruising was a big part of what we did. And we actually opened up the first cruise centre in Australia, so now nearly 20 years ago. And I think a lot of people thought, gee, does anyone really like cruising? And at the time, I think we only had 1 or 2 cruise ships visiting Australia, probably only one here based. Now, it's just a massive part of our business where I think 1 in 3 of our client bookings have a cruise component in it. So it's great. Then we branched out into corporate travel. So we look after a lot of the universities, a lot of the wineries, some iconic brands. We've looked after Coopers and Beerenberg and companies like that. So that also, is a plan to diversify your business and not put your eggs in one basket. And more recently around event travel. So we're doing MICE and event travel as well.
Yeah.
So,
How important do you think that growth and some of that scaling around people is that, it's you and the Hoffman family basically owning the business, that, it's a privately owned company. Yes, you've got scale and size, but compared to somebody like a Flight Centre, which is a publicly listed vehicle with, franchises and all the other bits and pieces that go with it, has that, do you think, been a real key part? Is just, I guess, the tightly held component?
Yeah, look, we look at the Flight Centre Group, and they're a great company. Don't get me wrong, but I think their shortcomings are that they're a really big tanker and it's hard to manoeuvre. Whereas we're very nimble, and we like to think that we can make decisions very quickly. It's a very flat management style. My office, Phil's office, the execs, they're all on the same floor, and it's very easy to make a decision. Yeah. We also believe that speed to market is a huge thing for us. It's a great advantage, again, that we may have over our competitors. Decision can be made in the boardroom on Thursday, and it can be advertised in the paper on a Saturday. Now, none of our competitors can do that because they're going through head offices and all sorts of structures, a lot of red tape to get those things out there. So a deal might come through on a Thursday. We can actually have it in the paper on the weekend. But by the time the competitors can kind of sort themselves out, that deal might have already expired. Yeah. So that speed to market is a big advantage.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting point. So, there's speed to market, but there's speed in reaction to other things as well. And you just mentioned before about, 9/11 and, Ansett and GFC and the last 12 months, I can't imagine what it's been like to walk through your shoes, but I can imagine that speed of reaction and having a tightly knit, call it a crisis committee or executive committee to be able to make real-time decisions, has been really important to you guys being able to continue to operate. Do you want to talk us through the last 12 months and what that's looked like from, the internal mechanics of some of that decision making?
Yeah, I think you raise a good point. We call it being nimble, nimble in business, nimble in a crisis as well. And we've lived through quite a few crises, in the 6 years that I've been there. We talked about 9/11. Believe it or not, SARS was one of the worst ones that we went through, and that was 2003, I think. And I actually thought that this COVID, this latest pandemic, was actually going to be like a SARS. Yeah. And that was pretty devastating for our business at the time financially, but it only shut us down for about 2.5 months. Here we are now, basically been effectively shut down for, 14, 15 months already, and it's going to be a little while until we can get back to doing what we do best, is selling international travel. So it'll be a 2-year issue, this one. So who would have thought? And the nimbleness of making decisions, I think, has held us in good stead, and I remember standing on a chair and effectively talking to the team that we were standing down. That night we put on some drinks and a barbecue. They all knew that it was going to be pretty grave. We had to make some very, very quick decisions. And, standing on that chair, I said, look, this is the decision we've had to make for the survival of the business, the survival of the business and the survival of your jobs, medium term. And there's going to be some short-term pain for all of us here. And effectively, this group here is going to be stood down. And it was pretty hard to tell them that, but at the time I was thinking, this is an 8-week problem. This is not going to, and in 8 weeks' time I'll be able to talk to these people and say, righto, let's get back to what we do.
Get back to business.
And it just rolled on and rolled on. So it was really tough. So I guess what I'm leading there is one, the first thing is make your decisions quick. If you're going to make them, make them quick. Because if you hang on too long and those costs blow out, because let's face it, we couldn't control our revenue. The revenue was cut off. So all we could do was look at our 4 major costs, which I'll touch on later on, that we attacked very, very quickly. But if you're going to make the decision, make it quickly, because I think some of our competitors didn't, and we've seen the result of that. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of great colleagues. STA, insolvent. Flight Centre Group lost about 80% of their stores in South Australia, and I just don't think they were nimble enough. As hard as those decisions are you've got to make them, and we did. But the second part was that culture that we've built over a long time. There was no reason for the team to not believe what we were saying. They were in it for us. They were upset mainly that they just weren't going to see each other for a few weeks. But other than that, they were all behind us because they knew that we had to make those decisions to actually get through. So, the human toll has been the hardest because as this dragged on, we have lost people. We've lost probably about 20 to 25% of our staff, which I think if we look at it overall compared to, the rest of the industry, it's second to none. Most of them are 70 or 80% down. So actually sitting down with people and making them redundant has been a real challenge. We haven't had to do too many, but what we did say to everyone was, for your own financial security, think of yourself first, and if there's another job out there, take it, because we don't know when we're going to be able to take you back up. As this got longer and longer, and so we had some good people leave our business. In fact, great people leave our business. People that had been with us for nearly as long as I've been there, 25, 26 years, many over 20, and some in their 60s. So it was really hard to see them go. And it kills me to this day that we've lost those people. But I guess on the flip side, deep down, I'm happy that they have looked after their own security and they're okay. They can still pay the bills. So that's probably been the hardest part. I guess the next and the obvious one is the financial whack that you take in this, and it's lucky that we've managed our business really well over the years. We had some retained earnings there. I've got a very conservative accountant who effectively acts as my CFO. So we had some good retained earnings there, but again, they'll only last so long. So you've got to really attack your four major things. So we've talked about the staff, and the unfortunate circumstances around that. Then it's your landlords. So you've got to talk about your occupancy. And we're lucky we had the commercial code of conduct there for a little while, which gave us a bit of relief, but that's gone now. So we've had to have one-on-one conversations. Most of them have been pretty understanding, which is great. But you're dealing with 11 different landlords, and everyone's going to have a different position. And I feel for them as well because. That's their income, and they might be a mum and dad investor who've bought a property and we lease it, and that's so it's an impact on them. Marketing is the next one that we look at, and we've taken our marketing costs down to zero. And although the public will still see us advertising, and it's really important that we're still out there showing that we've got security and strength, that is all funded by our partners. Pretty well most of that is funded by our partners who see us as a vehicle back to recovery for them as well. So they're coming to us and saying, look, we, particular cruise line, for example, they say, look, we do need to advertise, and we understand that if we're going to get results, we're going to do it with a brand of strength, which is your strength. Let's do a partnership together. So that's worked really well for us, where we've been able to keep a presence in the marketplace. And I think that gives some security for people with existing bookings with us, and maybe potentially, they're waiting for a refund or they've got a credit, and for a lot of new clientele that we're going to attract because they just simply don't have a travel agent anymore because they've disappeared. And then the last one is the last cost that I look at is communication costs. So, just think Telstra and Optus and all those things that are a big player in what we do for, broadband and Wi-Fi and all that type of stuff.
A couple of things there I want to just touch on, if I can. You mentioned culture and the people and losing a lot of good people. You also mentioned then just the partnerships that you've had with your travel partners and so forth with this funding. By the sounds, the building of those relationships over a long period of time has been more critical than ever in terms of getting through the last 12 months. And I suppose, people, I think, quite often neglect focusing on the actual building of their relationships, actually looking at things at a transactional level, not a relationship level. And by the sounds, the building of those relationships over a long period of time, investing in your people, investing in your partners is actually now a key part of actually getting you through because you can lean back on them when you really need them the most.
No doubt, Andrew. I would say it's one of the key reasons why I'm still sitting here today talking to you rather than having to close some stores, because we have put a massive amount of value on building partnerships and relationships from day one. You know, Phil, certainly when I came into the business, I couldn't believe what strength we had there already, and I think we've just taken it to another level over the years. They trust that we can perform, but I think more than that they trust that we're actually a partner no matter what happens, whether in times of crisis or when times are good. And I think we all earn our stripes when, you know, things are a bit more challenged. And I know we're even going to come out of this stronger than ever, but, you know, if you didn't have those relationships, it would be near impossible to get your brand out there. And, you know, one thing that I do know when we sit down with our partners, and they say it to us straight out, you know, you guys are as strong as we've got in the industry. So that makes me really proud. And I think it just comes back to treating people not as a supplier, but as a partner. Yeah. And nearly what we call as part of our family. Yeah. You know, and a lot of these people have become great friends of mine and Phil. You know, they're not only strong colleagues, they've become great friends. I've been to their weddings and, you know, I've been to the christening of their kids and things like that, because that's the kind of relationship we've built with them. Yeah, no, that's really cool. The other thing I heard just as you were talking about that is mate, I can feel how much this has impacted you. Now, you know, I think it's been trying for every business owner over the last 12 months regarding the uncertainty and things like that. As somebody that's gone through seeing, I guess, the escalation and the growth and, you know, I guess the momentum of things going well, how have you looked after yourself over the last 12 months when, you know, you're having to have those tough conversations with people and say, well, do you know what, go and find another job, and you know, you see another good person walk out the door and, you know, your revenue goes to zero. What have you done to look after yourself? Have you got a network of people that you hang out with? Just talk us through that from a personal. Yeah, look, it's interesting. You have your ups and downs. There's no doubt. You have your bad days, you have your good days. And I always say to my team that we can't all be up together. What we definitely can't have is everyone down together. So pick someone up who's a bit down by their shoulders and say it's going to be okay. Even if you don't think it's going to be okay, you say it's going to be okay. Look, I'm lucky in that respect that again, coming back to some of those partners, they're a couple that I've leaned on that, you know, they might be CEO of another travel company or one of our, you know, key partners. And I was only in Sydney a couple of days ago, and I was actually with the CEO and owner of a very similar sized company, and we share a lot of information. We're in a non-compete situation. He's on the East Coast. I'm kind of, you know, so we actually just sat down, and what we said is, what are our 10 biggest worries at the moment, business and personal? Yeah. Let's sit down face to face over a couple of beers and let's go through those. And it was just amazing the strength that both of us got out of that. Yeah. And also the potential savings for the business, you know, because he has a win somewhere and I have a win somewhere else and whatever. The other one is just having a really strong support from family and friends. I think just to be able to ring up someone on a Saturday and say, look, you know, I need to have a beer or a chat or whatever. They all know what I'm going through because they've been long-term, you know, they've been around for a long while. So they've seen the successes, and they also know that, you know, we're going through a really challenging period, both emotionally and financially. So I think, you know, that combination is what I lean on when I need it. And, you know, as they often say, it's a bit lonely at the top, but I don't see myself just by myself. You know, there's others around that I can talk to. No, that's really good. It's interesting. I love that 10 biggest worries catching up with. And, you know, I think one of the unfortunate things in businesses is quite often people look at their, you know, similar size businesses in the same industry as their competitors and we can't possibly talk to them because they might steal our clients or we might do this. That's a great example of just where collaboration and trust within a relationship can actually be mutually beneficial. Yeah, it's a funny thing, Andrew, that we very rarely see each other like that in our industry. We're a very, very close industry, and, you know, we have a lot of networking opportunities. Certainly in the past, lots of conferences to go to and whatever, where we get together. We've all become really good friends. Yeah. And within that group, you soon work out, you know, who you can be aligned to, who you're comfortable in chatting to. Yeah, there might be a couple that you just go, no, I'm not going to go there, or it's a bit close to home. It's in your own backyard or whatever. So you've got to be a bit careful there. But generally, a lot of people are just great friends. Yeah. And it's a unique industry. And I know anyone from the outside, they look at it and they go, wow, this is a bit weird. Cool. Yeah, but I think it's a really good thing. Yeah. And I don't think it happens in industries enough. No. You know, I do a lot of work in the
farming or rural clients that you have people on opposite side of the fence that they won't talk to each other. Yeah. It's like, well, this makes no sense.
No. We're definitely not like that, which is great.
Yeah, that's very cool. Mate, one of the other things that's really intrigued me over the years in the time that I've known you is you've obviously been down with Phil and Alison for a long time and then became the non-family CEO.
Yeah.
Has that how was that changed? Did that pose any particular challenges in a family business as such?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I guess I look at it as that it's two families. It's my family and it's the Hoffman family. It's just that he was the founder and the name on the door.
Yeah.
So I don't really see it as a CEO of a non-family or whatever. So I think the other thing too is Phil and I have always had a great relationship. You know, I think we've always known our roles in the business. You know, Phil probably, let's say, for the last 20 years has been very much more on the promotional side of the business, whereas I've been very much more on the operational side of the business. Yeah. And we do cross over. There is no doubt about it. And, we have our disagreements, of course, but they're healthy disagreements. I think every business needs to have that. Yeah. But I think also the other thing is, which is a great moderator, is we just have a fantastic senior management team. Yeah. And, pretty well the decisions of the business 99% of the time are made with those people. Yeah. So it's a very collaborative approach. So if there's any heat in it between, say, Phil and I, well, it's taken out straight away because it's a group decision. Yeah. And of course, ultimately I'm going to have the say on a strategic basis. But, very rarely do I have to overrule what the group is saying. They're a fantastic senior management team and they've been with me for so long that, they kind of know what we're thinking before we get into that boardroom, which is really good. So I could count on one hand, any potential conflict we would have had. We've sorted it out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I just don't see it as an issue.
Yeah, interesting. The senior management team. Do you have an advisory board or anything like that?
No, we haven't gone down that line. We've talked about it so many times, and I think eventually we will go down there. I'd love to get some, maybe an independent chair or someone like, just to get some kind of external experience in there. But of course, COVID hit, and probably some of those plans were put on ice. But again, I do talk to a lot of people, a lot of business people, and I've never really had a mentor as such, but I try and surround myself with key leaders of many different industries. Yeah. And, whether it's having a bite to eat with them or a beer or just picking up the phone or having a coffee, no matter what, I try and surround myself with people that have, some great experience in other areas, whether it's government, whether it's private enterprise, whether it's sport. I was using Brian Cunningham there for a little while as a coach rather than more than a mentor, I guess. And he had so many experience, he's been CEO of Port Adelaide Football Club, so he's had that sport. He's got his own business, so private enterprise, and he was with government. So, what he couldn't teach me in the couple of years I was with him, I didn't really need to know. So I do, really appreciate the time that Brian put into me probably 8-9 years ago, which was great. And now I just seek out people that I think are going to be able to assist me along the way. I speak to a CEO of a public listed company all the time who's become a really good friend. And he's really helped me through this last bit of a financial crisis, if you want to call it that. Yep. Just around, modelling for the future and, where do you look, low, mid, high as far as your forecasts are going. And he said, never set your sights too low because it's really hard to get yourself off the canvas, So, it's important that you surround yourself with people that have, I guess, some independent advice.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. As part of that routine, is that something you specifically allocate time to every week, whether it be go and research or go and make sure you're having a certain number of coffee catch-ups or lunch catch-ups with these people? Is that
probably not. No, probably it's more ad hoc when I feel that I need it. And likewise, I probably, a few people seek me out for advice and I'm more than happy to sit down because there's always learnings from both sides. That's the way I get it. So, but I would say it's more ad hoc. Yeah. But it's pretty regular.
Mate, one of the things that's always been pretty neat about Phil Hoffman, and I know you had the commercial kitchen down at Glenelg and cooking classes, and you mentioned the events-based marketing and things like that before. We've seen a huge amount of change. I'll call it, with third-party distribution, through
Boy, we have.
Expedia, TripAdvisor, all these direct-to-market things. Yeah. How do you stay focused or innovative in terms of making sure that I guess you're staying ahead of the game in that, I'll call it that DIY space?
Yeah, and it's always been a bit of a challenge. I'll tell you one thing that probably, there's always good that comes out of bad, and I guess over the last 14, 15 months where basically we haven't been able to sell our main craft, which is international travel. We've had to look inwardly. Initially, it was intrastate, and I thought, my God, are we really going to be able to sell the cruise on the River Murray? Are we going to be able to sell some holiday apartments down at Port Elliot? But we had no choice. We actually had to go, you know what, that's part of our business model, our new business model now. Yeah. And then it went interstate, and even interstate, probably over the last 10 to 15 years, as you said, it's kind of been a do-it-yourself mentality with domestic holidays. But with the support again of partners, SATC were very supportive, and they helped us out with a very big South Australian marketing campaign. We were able to get our name out and say, hey, think of us when you want to book your unique experience in South Australia. And similarly now, we've gone to all the state tourism bodies and basically replicated that. So with Queensland and West Australia, the big winner has been with Rail. Rail anywhere at the moment is very popular. I think for those people that can't cruise, they see that's the next best thing. So, the GAN and the Indian Pacific and whatever. So I guess we've been able to pivot our business to, in a short term, where people are starting to think about us close to home and within Australia. But I think also medium to long term now, we've put ourselves out there and said, we can do this and we do it really well. People will actually come to us more often for that. But the other big one for me that really was eroding our middle ground, whether it's the trip to Asia or, New Zealand or the South Pacific, etc., was this mass advertising that you saw from these disruptors where they just packaged everything up. They had a from price, I would say, was worth $6,000, now $3,000, and we call it impulse buying. So you're actually, with your wife, you were sitting down and you were thinking of a trip to Vietnam, and you open the page 3 and there's a fantastic trip to Tahiti. You go, okay, we're going to Tahiti. So traditionally what you would have done is you would have come in and you would have planned your trip to, let's say, Vietnam or wherever you were thinking of going, or Thailand, sat down with our consultant, work through that and eventually book that with us or whatever. But then there was this whole new market where they said, forget the destination, we're just going to put a great package in front of you and it's going to look that good, you're just going to buy it. And that's called impulse travel or impulse buying. That really eroded our market. More than just Airbnb or any of that, it just eroded our market. And we've gone, gee, we've got to do something about that. So what we did is just prior to COVID, about 6 months to COVID, we actually did a partnership with a third-party company, and we got into that space. So we said, they can't have this by themselves. We're going to fight back. And so that was really important, and we got some massive traction on that very quickly, because what it did, it put a trusted brand together with what the consumer was kind of looking for. So people went, okay, well, that sounds all right. This is a deal made in heaven. And so we were packing out our conference centre with, 200, 250 people just coming to hear about this new offering from Hoffman Travel. Unfortunately, then COVID hit and we had to refund it all. So I kind of wish I didn't do that deal, because it ended up with a lot of work. But you know what, we're just starting to get that back out there again. And soon as we're allowed, we're really pushing that really hard. So I think that was one thing that we created where we could say, you know what, we are innovative. We're not going to just sit down and do the traditional style of travel. We're prepared to move with the times and really what the consumer wants.
But I think that's a great example, though, of, you've had a go at something and clearly it's obviously worked. The market's obviously just moved against you, but given you've had a go at it, there's no reason why in 6 months' time that you just, it's a proven product, you turn it back on and away you go.
And which we will. I think the other one too is, I think you talked about Expedia and people booking online and whatever. We've had to put a lot of work into our website. And we talk about that omni-channel, just about every channel we use. So we push everything back to our website. So that's kind of our source of truth. Now on there, we've got to have product that people are looking for. Now it can be that European River cruise that we've advertised in the paper, or it could be a cruise that on 5AA we were promoting, but we push it back to the website so they can find more information. But what we also have recognised is that, someone like Expedia, who have gone out there with kind of cheap and cheerful, kind of instant purchase accommodation, which at times is going to be at a more competitive level than a more flexible option booked through a travel agent. We decided to do a deal with some bed banks, because that's effectively what they're called. They're bed banks. And what they do is they consolidate all the different rates that the hotels are prepared to offer. and they put it into one spot for consumers to look at.
Yeah.
And that's why it's been very successful. Well, we've done the exact same thing. So we've gone out and done the deal. So when we point everyone back to our website, if you want to book accommodation in Sydney or Paris or London, if you can, or when you want to travel again, you've got two options. You've got pretty well that bed bank option, which is a non-refundable, it comes with no frills, no breakfast, no nothing, whatever, at say $200, or you can have the more flexible rate at $250, which comes with a few more options, and you can change the dates and things like that. Again, it's up to the consumer then to decide which way they want to go. I would always prefer the more flexible option because things change all the time. But you know what? The consumers at times will go, you know what, for 20% less, I'm prepared to take that risk.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, do you have a life motto? A life motto?
I've got a life model. Definitely the motto, yeah. I've had it from probably nearly the day that I started Phil Hoffman Travel, and it's just a simple one. It's never leave anything in the tank. Yep. So if you're going to have a crack at something, do it properly, basically. Like just throw everything at it, because you'll never know how good you're at if you only go in half-baked. So the staff probably get sick of hearing that motto at times, because, I do roll it out a bit, but it's because I believe in it. I think if you're going to do something, why not do it at 100%?
Love it. Thanks, mate. It's been a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks, Andrew.
Cheers.